Hello YouTube, welcome to a new video. My name is Abuze. On today's video, we are going to be talking about skill retouching in details. First, we are going to be talking about basic settings you need to make both on your camera and Photoshop. And then secondly, we are going to be we are going to simultaneously talk about how to create layer mask ready for frequency separation, and then how to create Photoshop action that will automatically create frequency separation layers for you anytime you want to do frequency separation in Photoshop. And then thirdly, we are going to talk about different techniques of doing frequency separation, because a lot of you guys have been asking me of why am I using color correction layer instead of low frequency separation layers to mix my skin texture. And then fourth, we are going to discuss on how I use mixer brush for frequency separation. And then fifth, we are going to discuss on how I color grade my skin using adjustment layer, and then how I use LUTs to color grade my skin. And then finally, I'm going to show you guys how I export my images from Photoshop and still maintain maximum image quality. So without any further ado, let's roll the intro. Alright, just like I usually said, the foundation of every amazing picture starts from getting it right from the camera. Well, it is really important if you shoot raw on your image quality. So for your image quality, always try and shoot raw. For JPEG, for me, JPEG is for those that only shoot and take the image directly to their mobile phone ready to use. But for you that has to edit and re-edit, always shoot raw so that you have more flexibility. You have picture with a lot of quality that give you more flexibility to touch and retouch the image without losing its quality. And then when it comes to your color profile, always shoot Adobe RGB, not sRGB. Shoot Adobe RGB so that you have more color space to tweak over your colors and have accuracy when it comes to color grading. Then when it comes to your computer, let's go over to the computer and see what are the basic settings you need to make before you start retouching your images. So let's get to the computer. Alright, to set up our Photoshop, let's open up this particular image and see how we can over in setting up our Photoshop ready for skill retouching. So whenever you open a raw image, first is it should bring you into camera raw, as you can see in on the screen. So the very first thing that I usually do is I will click over here where I'm hovering my mouse. So here I will have the ability to change my color space. I will make sure I'm on Adobe RGB 1998, and then my depth to 16-bit, because we are going to be using 16-bit frequency separation action if we happen to create action. So initially what I'm trying to see here is 8-bit editing image in 16-bit is far better than editing image in 8-bit. So 16-bit is better than 8-bit. So that's why we are switching our depth to 16-bit. So after we change our image depth to 16-bit and then we click OK. So that's the basic settings that you need to make here. So we rotate the image, and then if you have minor adjustments you need to do before you open up your image into Photoshop, you first have to do it here in camera raw. So for me, I usually make sure I get my image right from the camera. So the only thing that I usually do in camera raw, what I will do is I will only take my highlights down, and then I take my shadows up a little. Then if I have colors to adjust, I don't usually like working with green, then I will take it down, and then I will open my image into Photoshop, as you can see. So by default, anytime you install a Photoshop, your Photoshop on your computer, this is how it usually shows. So the first thing we are going to do is we are going to Windows, and then we go to workspace, and then we change from essential to photography. And then the second thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to eliminate the libraries and adjustment tab. I don't usually like keeping them. And then For these actions icon, I'm going to drag it to where histogram and navigator are, and then I would just have to push it down so that my actions will be visible. Let me remove the actions so that we can import them together. And then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to change the color of the interface, because I don't like working with white interface. I like seeing it dark, so that whenever I'm working, the image that I'm working on will stand out from the interface. So I don't like the white, and because I don't like too much white hitting my eyes, for the safety of my eyes as well, so I like using the dark interface. What we are going to do is we are going to Photoshop, and then we go to preference, and then we go to interface, and then we switch from the white to the darkest interface. I like working with that. It's usually nice to my eyes. As you can see, our image stands out from the background, from the interface, unlike the white. And then the next thing we are going to do is we are going back to Photoshop, preference, and then for this time around we are going to let's go to workspace and see what we can change there. For workspace, we don't have anything to change. Tools, there's nothing as well. History, file handling, and then if we go to performance, here we have to increase the level of RAM which your Photoshop consume from your computer. So to maximize the speed of our Photoshop, we have to increase the level of the RAM that Photoshop use from the computer. So I always like keeping it between 70 to 80. So if you are someone that multitask on your computer running Photoshop aside another program, so it's better to keep it somewhere around 60, so that to avoid one program from crashing. So for me, that I always stick to Photoshop. I don't multitask, so I usually keep it around 70 to 80. So for this, let's keep it around 80 is usually fine. And then let's go to scratch disk. No, we don't have anything to do over there. I think that is all we have to change so far from these settings, this angle of settings. And then the next thing we are going to do for the settings of Photoshop is let's click this particular, so that we will shorten the list of our tools, as you can see here. So the next thing we are going to do, since we are going to be using mixer brush for our frequency separation, so we are going to make sure our mixer brush is in between brush tool and pencil tool. So how we are going to bring it up here is we are going to double click and hold these three dots that you are seeing, and then we go to edit toolbar. So what you are going to do is by the left hand side, we are going to navigate to our brush and pencil tool tab here, and then on the left hand side we are going to navigate to where our mixer brush is. Here is our mixer brush. Then we drag and drop it in between pencil and brush tool, as you can see, and then we hit our done button. So whenever we are looking for our mixer brush, we are always going to find it here in between our brush and pencil tool. It's not necessary for us to be going to this long procedure before we navigate and find our mixer brush. So basically that's the settings I used to apply on my Photoshop ready for image editing. Now let's move to how to create layers for frequency separation, and then I'll show you how to create actions, so that whenever you want to do frequency separation, you will need to go over and create layers before you start doing frequency separation whenever you want to edit your image. So this action will just be there for you whenever you want to do frequency separation. all you have to do is just to press a button, and then Photoshop will automatically create these layers for you to start your frequency separation. Now let's get Photoshop and see how we can create these layers. So before we start creating our frequency separation layer and action, you have to understand that we have two different types of actions. We have the 8-bit and then the 16-bit actions. Though we are going to be editing our image always on 16-bit, since 16-bit will give us more flexibility when it comes to retouching our image. So if you want to know the bit of your image, what you have to do is go to image mode, and then here you can find if your image is on 16-bit or 8-bit. So for the sake of this tutorial, we are going to create our frequency separation layers and action based on 8-bit image, then we later create the 16-bit. So now we are going to click the 8-bit image, and then we go ahead now and create our frequency separation layers. So what we are going to do next is we are going to click this folder that you are seeing. You are going to find it under the action tab here. So if you click it, you are going to name it as frequency separation, and then you hit OK. And then the next thing you are going to do is you are going to this icon that I'm hovering my mouse around. If you click it, you are going to name it to frequency separation 8 bits, since we are creating 8-bit frequency separation action. And then we can color label it to blue. This color won't make any of your frequency separation better, so it's just for personal preference, so you can choose any color you feel is okay for you. So for the sake of this tutorial, let's go for blue, and then we hit record. So now what is going to happen is whatever we do on our layer tab here, it's going to be recorded on the action tab above here. So for us to create the frequency separation layers and action all together, the first thing we are going to do is we are going to duplicate our background layer twice by pressing Ctrl or Command J twice, and then we name our above layer as high frequency, and then the low layer we are going to name it as low frequency. And then I'll usually create an empty layer in between the high and low frequency and name it to color correction, and then I hit enter. And then the next thing we are going to do is we are going to select our low frequency and then go over to filter, you go over to blur, and then we select Gaussian blur. So how we are going to determine the level of radius you are going to use is you are going to zoom in a particular area of your image that you know is having the best skin texture. So what you are going to do is you are going to start increasing your radius, and you have to stop at the point where you cannot clearly see your skin texture. So for this image, we are going to stop at, I think, around 4.7 is okay, and then we hit OK. So what you are going to do is just before the Gaussian blur here, you are going to check this particular area, this particular box. The reason is this: whenever you are playing your action, when you are editing another image, so whenever you play the action will stop right here where you are going to decide your radius of Gaussian blur. Then you select the radius that will fit that particular image you are going to edit, and then you proceed from there. And then after that, the next thing we are going to do is we are going to go over to our high FS. So we have to go to image, and then we select apply image. So what you are going to do here, we are going to change our layer to low frequency, and then we change our blend mode to subtract, and then we are going to keep our scale at 2 and then offset at 128, and then we hit OK. And then the next thing we are going to do is we are going to change the blend mode of our layer here to linear light. That's it. So the very next thing we are going to do is we are going to select all the layers, and then we group them, and then we can name them to frequency separation, 8 bits, and then we hit enter. So for us to end the action here, the next thing we are going to do, we are just going to select the stop recording button here. So now we are done creating the frequency separation action and then layers all together. So this is our action. These are all the steps that we have followed while we are creating our frequency separation layers here. So for us to make use of the action whenever we are going to edit our image, for example, let's delete this one that we have created. If we want to create the action without any stress, all we have to do is just go over and select the frequency separation here, 8-bit, and then we play the action. Then Photoshop will automatically do everything for us, and then it will stop here at Gaussian glow, where we have to decide the radius of which we want to use in editing the particular image we are editing, and then we hit OK, and then it will do the rest of the job. As you can see, everything is created automatically using the action. Alright, now let's get rid of the frequency separation 16-bit layers here. Now let's create the frequency separation layers and action for the 16-bit. Let's minimize these layers here. So what we are going to do first, we are going to go over to image and then mode, and then switch back our image to 16-bit, since we are now creating 16-bit layers for frequency separation. The next thing we are going to do, we are going to duplicate. Before we get to that, we are going to hit our record, create new action here, and then we have to make sure we are on our frequency separation set, and then we name it frequency separation 16-bit, and then we give this a red color, and then we hit record. So what we are going to do, we are going to duplicate our background layer twice by pressing Command or Control J twice, and then we are going to rename the high layer as high frequency, and then the lower layer we are going to name it as low frequency. And then we are going to create an empty layer in between, and then we name it color correction, and then we are going to uncheck the high FPS and go back to our low FPS and go to filter, blur, and then we hit our Gaussian blur, and then we are going to leave it at 4.7, and then we are going to check this box so that next time whenever we're editing another image, we have the ability to adjust our radius. And then we check back our high fs, and then we select it and go to image, and then we hit apply image, and then we are going to make sure we are on our low frequency, and then we select invert, and then on our blending mode we are going to select add, and then we are going to change our scale to 2, and then we are going to leave our offset at 0, and then we hit OK, and then we go to our blending mode, and then we select linear lights, and then we select all the layers, and then we put them in a group, and then we run to frequency separation 16 bits. We hit enter, then we open and select our LFS, and then we hit our stop recording. So that's it. We also created our frequency separation layers for 16-bit. Let's delete it and also give it a try. We select our 16-bit, and then we play the action. As you can see, it's created for us. We press OK, and then here we are, our layers for frequency separation are ready using the action. But for personal reason, I don't like seeing the action layers here. So what I usually like doing is I'll go over to this line that I'm hovering my mouse around, and then I select the bottom mode. So it's always better for me viewing it on this format. So let's delete the frequency separation layers and try them both. For frequency separation 8-bit, here it is, and then for frequency separation 16-bit, here is our action. So basically that's how I create my layers and actions for frequency separation. So now what you are going to do next is I'm going to show you guys how I make use of these actions and layers to do my frequency separation in Photoshop. So let's get to it. Alright, before I start, let me at least try addressing this question that people usually ask me, that where am I using color correction to mix my skin instead of the low frequency separation layer. Alright, first you need to understand all of them are the same thing, but what I mean by the same thing, they all deliver the same result if you make use of them the right way. But it's just that they all have different manner of approach before you can use them. Alright, let me first play the frequency separation action 16-bit, and then I hit OK. Well, for the color correction, if you notice, I always use the color correction layer to mix my skin using the mixer brush. And then you have to remember, if I select my mixer brush, I always check sample all layers, and then I use my mixer brush, and then I uncheck my high FS as well, and then I mix my skin, as you can see. But if you want to use the low frequency separation, their difference is this: for the low FS, you don't need to uncheck the high FS, and then you are not going to sample all layers, but the only thing is that you are you are going to make use of the low frequency layer to mix your skin, and then this color correction will not be needed for you. So you can just erase it, and then you start mixing your skin. As you can see, they all blend the skin. Alright, the truth is all of them has their own pros and cons. Why I prefer using the color correction layer is this. If I play my frequency separation and then I check my sample all layers, I uncheck the high FS, and then if I'm on my color correction and I use my mixer brush, I mix the skin. Whenever I make a mistake, I can simply just use my eraser tool and erase that particular area which I feel I make a mistake, as you can see, and then go back to my mixer brush and then fix or redo that particular area where I made the mistake and erase. But as for the low frequency separation, you can't do that. The only thing you can do is this: you can only duplicate your low frequency separation layer by pressing Command or Control G, and then you hold Alt and click on the low frequency separation layer, and then if you can remember, you have to uncheck your sample on layer, and then you will then mix your skin. But if you can remember, if you made a mistake, you can't use eraser tool because it's going to erase the entire layer. It's going to erase the part of the layer entirely which you make the mistake. So the only solution for you is just to erase the copied low frequency separation, and then you duplicate the low frequency separation layer again, you clip it to the low frequency separation, and then you start all over again. While as on the color correction, you don't need to start all over. You only need to erase the part which you feel you make the mistake, and then you redo the area again. So basically that's just the reason why I prefer using it, and it's been working for me. There is no one way of doing it. You just need to adapt the method which you feel is better for you and stick to it. The process doesn't matter, it's just the end result. As far as mixing on the low frequency separation layer works for you, then stick to it. It's all the same thing. I can make use of this action to also mix on the low frequency separation layer, as you have seen earlier. So now that we created our frequency separation action for 8-bit and 16-bit, now we are going to move ahead and use these layers and mix our skin texture. That's the frequency separation. So what we are going to do is we are going to play the frequency separation action 16-bit, since our image is on 16-bit. So if you are check image mode, and then we confirm our image is on 16-bit, and then we go ahead over and play our frequency separation action 16-bit. all right, don't forget, if you reach here, what you are going to do is to make sure you increase your radius to the point where you cannot clearly see your skin texture. It should not be visible like this, so you have to increase it to the level that you cannot clearly see your skin texture. That's the best spot for you to stop. Every image will definitely require different radius, because one image may have maybe rich with skin texture compared to another, so you can't keep one radius and be using it all over your image. No, so every image will definitely require different radius. For this image, we are going to stop at 4.7, and then we hit our OK. So for us to start mixing, we have to make sure we set our mixer brush, the setting of our mixer brush here. We have to uncheck the first option here, which is load brush. We have to uncheck it, and then we have to check clean brush after each stroke, and then our weight should be 30, load 30, mix 30, and then flow 30. Here should be 10, and then sample all layers should be checked as well. So for us to start mixing, we have to make sure we are on our color correction, and then we uncheck our high FS. So basically what you have to do to mix your skin using the mixer brush is to mix highlight within highlight, and then shadows within shadows, and then mix areas that are in between highlight and shadows, so that to smooth the transition between highlight and shadows. So let's zoom our image. So something you should know with mixer brush is this: whenever you select your mixer brush, the moment you click on your skin, what you are telling your mixer brush is, hey mixer brush, sample this particular color of skin on my brush until I let go of my click. Because whenever you click on the highlight and you start mixing, your brush will pick up that particular skin color. If you move your brush to the shadows, you will notice you are moving the highlights to the shadow areas. Likewise, if you mix the shadows and then you drag to the highlight, you move the shadows into the highlight areas, which is not good. So you have to always mix shadows within shadows and then highlight within highlight. To maintain, how do you do that is, whenever you click and mix, if you are going to move to the shadows area, what you are going to do is you have to let go your click, which means now your mixer brush is not picking any color, and then you move to the shadows areas and click again, then it pick the color of that particular shadow of that particular area, and then you keep on mixing. Likewise, if you are in between highlight and shadows, then you click and then move your brush just around the boundary between the highlight and shadow. So that is how you will be mixing your skin all over, starting from the forehead. As for me, that's how I usually like doing it. I'll move from the forehead and then down to the chin. So that's how I'll be mixing the skin until I mix the entire skin. So that's how it is. And something you should understand is, don't always make your brush very small and then you mix, and make your brush as big as it can be depending on the area you are mixing. If the area is big enough to make your brush to this size, make it and then you brush the area. If it is not big, then you have to take your brush down to fit the particular area you want to mix. Like for example, here on her nostril, if I want to mix the highlight, I will have to narrow my brush down so that I will be able to mix the highlight of the area. Likewise, if I want to move to the shadow, and then I will move my brush to the shadow area. If I want to mix the boundary, then I'll stick and move my brush along with the movement of the boundary. As you are seeing, it's moving horizontal, then there is no problem if I move my brush along the boundary. So that's how you'll be mixing your skin, starting from the forehead, like I said, and then you move down to the chin. So let's get to it. And something you should understand, if you are just starting learning frequency separation, is something that you need to take your time and learn. It's something that you don't need to rush, so you have to follow it slowly until you get better at it. So as you are getting better at it, that's how you'll be faster at it. So if you are learning, it's better to start doing it small. It's something you should not rush. It's just something that you need to take your time and practice until you get better at it. And then I know some of you have been seeing other like professional photographers online using Wacom tab, and maybe you are thinking, all right, I can't do it just like they did until I also buy that particular Wacom tab or something like that. No, it's something you can even do with the mouse on your computer, or you can use your external mouse, not necessarily with Wacom tab, because I have seen a lot of good photographers that can do far better than I can, and they are not using Wacom tab. They are using just their mouse and deliver the job. So it's not from the Wacom tab, is knowing how to use what you have. That's just the best thing. Yes, Wacom tab I can say Wacom tab can make you to retouch faster, and then you be precise whenever you are mixing your skin, but it doesn't mean you cannot do it without the Wacom tab. You can just do it without the Wacom tab. So that's something you should keep at the back of your mind. So after we are done mixing our skin, the very next thing we are going to do is we are going to fix the areas where we overdo, like the eyebrow, the side of the face, the lips, and the rest. So what we are going to do is we are going to make sure we are on color correction layer, and then we go over and select our eraser tool, and then we carefully erase the areas where we erase the areas where we overdo, where we shouldn't use our brush on, like the part of her hair, and then we go over to the side of her face, and then go over to this side as well. As you can see, so all these areas we don't want our mixer brush to mix them. And then we move to the eyebrow, go back to our eraser tool, and then we recover the hair, and then to the eyes, and then these eyeshadows below, they are very essential, so we recover them, and then let's move to the other eye. We recover our eyebrow, and then we move to the eyeshadow here. We need it back, it's very essential, as you can see. And then we move to the nose, most especially the nostril. The shadows here are very essential, so we need them back. Then we slightly recover these shadows around her nose. We need them as well. And then we go over to the lips. And that's it. So the next thing we are going to do is we are going to remove blemishes. So how I go over removing my blemishes is I always use the high FS, and then I use clone stamp, and then I zoom over and navigate to the blemish I want to get rid of, like this tiny one. So what I usually do is I'll go over to the blemish and clone next to the blemish. So what I do is I'll hold Alt and then I click and sample the skin texture next to the blemish, and then I overwrite on the blemish. So that's how I go over I'm stamping all the blemishes on my model face. Well, as for this lady, she doesn't have lots of blemishes on her face, so we are not going to do too much on the face. As you can see, just a little of it. It's not that much, so we are not going to waste time. I'm just going to clone stamp all over. As you can see, clone, and then we stamp, then this line around face, we clone and stamp and get rid of it. So whenever you're removing, take your time. The more you clear the blemish, the better the face, or the clean your the face of your model will look. So advisably, always take your time and clean the face of your model, only if you don't want to overdo or do excess of it. And it's always better to make your picture not too far from natural. If you overdo, it will look somehow. It will look too far from natural, which will not look pleasant to the eyes. So that's basically how I remove my skin texture. Let's do before, after, before and after. Let me zoom in the face and see. So we go before, after, and then before and after. So let's zoom out. So after I finish removing my blemish, the very next thing is to color grade my image. So I usually use lots which I have created for my skin color grading. I'll put a link in the description below for you guys if you want to download the lots, and then I'll also put a link for you guys to download my frequency separation action for 8-bit, 16-bit, and then the clean teeth and eyes action as well. I'll put a link in the description below for you to download the lots and the actions for free. So first, let's try color grading the skin with the lots, and then I'll eventually show you guys how you can also color grade your image without the lots using adjustment layer. So first, let's go over and try some of the lots that I created with you guys and see how they affect the skin. If you want to use them on your image, then you go over and download and make use of them for free. So let's go over to adjustment option, and then we go to color lookup, and then we select load lot, and then we go over and navigate to our lots. So as for me, they are inside a folder here. So let's begin with the first one. So this is it: before, after, before and after. Always remember, you can play with your opacity. If it is too much, then you reduce the opacity. So let's take the opacity back to 100 and try the second lot and see. You can see this one: before, after, before and after. Well, what you have to understand is you encounter different kind of skins. So there may be lots, there may be a picture that the first lot will work for you, and then if you try it on another different picture, it won't work for you until you try maybe the second and the third. So it depends on the skin of on the color of skin you are trying to work on, that you decide which of the lots that will work for that particular skin. So basically, that's how Yeah, it is. And whenever you're trying, don't just try the first one. If it look good to your eyes, then you skip and refuse to try the other ones. Always take your time and try the rest and choose the best of the best. So as for this image, let's see if we can, let's just make use of the photo before and after, before and after. And then something that I usually does is I always make sure the lot doesn't affect the other part of the image, only if it looks look nice. But if I don't want to the lot to affect the entire image, just if I want to limit it to just the skin, what I usually does is I'll go to my layer mask here and then press command or control I to invite and hide it. Then I go over to my normal brush, not mixer, normal brush. I make sure I'm on white foreground here, and then I brush over the skin and reveal the lots on my skin, on the skin of my model, as you can see. As you can see, a lot affect the skin, just like subtle of it, just not too much, a little of it. And I like and I really like it because I'm already pleased with the color of the skin. The outcome of the makeup is just nice on her face, so I just need a little touch of color grading on the skin. So let's do before, after, before and after. If I overdo, then I toggle and change my brush color to black, and then hide the parts which I don't want them on my skin, on the image, as you can see. Then I refine the edges, as you can see. So let's do, okay, sorry, before that let me fix this area. All right, let's do before, after, before and after. Let me zoom in a little more. Before and after. But if you want to color grade your skin using adjustment layer, let me show you how I do that. Let me erase the color decouple layer here, and then what I usually does is I will go to adjustment layer here, and then I select black and white, and then I change the blend mode to here to multiply. And then the next thing that I will do is I'll play with the reds and yellow layers, since our skin comprises of the yellow and the reds, maybe with orange. But here the only options that we have that can touch the color of our skin is just the reds and yellows. Then I will increase the brightness of the red. And then for the yellows as well, you can control that. As you can see, let's do before and after. And then I can as well play with the opacity. So let's do before, after, before and after. And then we can go over and make use of other layers, like let's try color balance, and then we can add reds if we feel we want, and then we can play with other layers as well. Let's try selective color, and then we go over to our yellows, and then we darken our yellows a little bit, or let's brighten it a little bit up, and then we try the neutral. Actually, there is no one way of doing it. What you have to understand is all these layers are just for you to always try and tweak from left to right until you find the desired color grading you are looking for. And then you have to also put at the back of your mind, just like you'll be encountering different color of skin, then you definitely need to be using different methods when it comes to your color grading, because the way you adjust your slides on this particular image will definitely differs if you want to color grade another different image. So basically that's it. Okay, let me group them, these layers that we make use of. Let's do before, after, before and after. We can also play with the opacity, before, after, before and after. And then we can add layer mask to it and invert as well. Then go back to our normal brush with white foreground, and then we reveal the part of our skin which we want to only color grade, just the skin, as you can see, because we want our color grading to be limited on the skin only, not the background, as you can see. So here it is, before, after, before and after. But always take your time to mask the layers very well. You don't need to rush it, but I'm just rushing because I don't, as I can see already, the video is long enough. So if you are personally doing it yourself, take your time and do it better and achieve the best possible result you can create. So let's do before, after, before and after. Basically that's how I color grade my images. And if you want to create a lot out of the layers which you have created and color graded your skin, let me do Ctrl Z and let me ungroup these layers. What you have to do is, first you have to get rid of the frequency separation layer here, because if you want to create a lot, the layers, you are only to leave your background layers and then your layers which you use to color grade your images. If you leave the frequency separation layers here, it won't be possible for you to create your own lot. So for us to get rid of it, let's select the background and the frequency separation layer here, and then we merge layers. And then the next thing we are going to do is we are going to select our layers. Is that even necessary? I don't think it's necessary. And then we go to File, and then we go to Export, and then we go to Color Lookup Table. So the settings you have to do here is you have to make sure you are on medium, and then you uncheck all rest of the options and only leave your cube file cube box checked. Cube usually works for almost all images, so that's why I'm sticking to the cube. And then you select OK, and then you name your lots to anything you want to name it. So let's name it to color skin color, and then we keep it to where we want to find it. So as for this, let's select a particular folder. Let's select desktop, and then we save it on the desktop. Here we go. So if we erase the layers and go over and select our adjustment option and select color lookup, we are just going to load and then load 3D lots and go over to our desktop and navigate to the skin color lot that we created. Here it is, and then we double click on it, and then here we are, and then we invert Ctrl I, and then we brush out the areas where we want to be visible. That's the skin, because we are only color grading the skin. So basically that's how I go over color grading my image using LUTs and then using layer mask. And then this is exactly how I use the layers to create a LUT after I finish color grading my image, so that next time if I want to use it on other images, I will just have to pick it as a LUT and then apply it on other images. So basically that's it for skin color grading. So after color grading my image, the next thing that I like doing is I always like to brighten the eyes. How do I brighten the eyes? Is by creating a new adjustment layer here by selecting hue and saturation. So on the hue and saturation, I usually select the yellow, because usually what affect the color of the eyes and teeth is mostly yellow, because they mostly pick the yellow color. So we are going to select the color, the yellow on the hue and saturation option, and then we take the yellows down to around negative 70 to 80. So somewhere 70 is okay, and then I'll push up the whites to somewhere around 80 to 84, somewhere around that range. So for this image, let's keep it around 83, and then we are going to change the hue a little and push it towards the blue, because I like my eyes to pick that blue tone, usually perfect for me. So around 10 is okay, and then I'll go over and select hue and saturation, adjust layer again, and go to channel mixer. So on the channel mixer, what I usually like to do is to select the monochrome and make sure I'm on gray, and then I then push the reds to before that I used to change the blending mode to screen, and then I push the red to around negative 130 or so. So let's keep it around negative 130, and then for the greens I usually keep it around between 130 to 140 as well. So for this image, let's keep it around 135, and then for the blues we keep it around between 50 to 60. So let's find somewhere around 150 is okay. And then I go over and select the channel mixer and the hue and saturation layer and group them by pressing Command or Control G, and then I rename them to clean teeth and eyes. And then I add layer mask to the layer, and then I invert by pressing Command or Control I. So to brighten up the eyes and teeth, I'll go over and select my normal brush, make sure I'm on white foreground. Let me zoom in the eyes. Then I brush over in the eyes and brighten it. As you can see, the brightness is not that excessive, because I always like to keep it somewhere around normal. If it is too much, it kinda usually looks somehow. So always try and keep your editing around the natural level. Don't overdo, don't let it look too artificial. So this is usually what works for me. That's why I keep the eyes around this one. Let's do before, after, before and after. So after brightening my eyes, the next thing that I'll do, I'll go over to my adjustment layer and go to levels. So it's on the levels that I'll hold and start shifting, increasing the whites, and then hold Alt. So where I will stop is I will stop immediately where I start seeing reds blowing from either the nose or the forehead. So for this image is the nose, then I stop there, and then I press Command or Control I to invert. Then I go over and select my normal brush to again with the white foreground, then I brush over the face so that I increase the brightness of the face. So this kinda usually work for me. I always does that in kinda almost all my images whenever I realize the brightness isn't enough for my liking. So this is the technique I usually use to increase the brightness. So after that, the next thing that I'll do is I'll just add watermark to my image if I want to, and then I export. How do I export my image? I usually hold Command Alt Shift S, and then I wait for Photoshop to load. It's kind of slow. And then what I usually does is I usually go for preset and make sure I'm on PNG24. Why I usually use PNG24 instead of the JPG, because PNG24 usually doesn't allow compression, because most of these images are going to social media like Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and all these social medias usually compress your image when you are trying to upload them online. So PNG24 is what usually prevents these sites to compress your image, in the sense that it will lose its quality and start going apart. So PNG usually does the job by maintaining my image quality whenever I uploading them on social media. So that's why I stick to PNG24. And then here on the height is what I usually change to between 1300 to 1500 at most. It depends on the quality of the image that I found. So mostly I use 1300, and then I click on save. So if I click save, then if I want to rename my image, here it is, and then I select the location where I want to find my image, and then I hit save, and then here we are. So basically that's the process I usually used to follow from starting to the finishing of my image editing in Photoshop. That's it for today's video. If you like the video, please hit this subscribe button, and don't forget to turn on your post notification so that you won't miss any of my latest content when I upload a new video. And don't forget to hit the like button, as it makes a huge difference in supporting the channel. Thank you for watching.